Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to week two of the 2026 Tufts Capstone project. What do we got? It looks like you all have added some things to the agenda. I can turn it over to you and we can go through your items.
Yeah, sure. We didn't add too much stuff, but we just thought to give you guys an overview of what happened last week and what we did. Basically in class, we finished our first short proposal and we talked about it as a whole class and received some feedback from both Linda as well as our classmates. Um, and I guess just to update you guys of where we at with identifying our problem, we sort of narrowed down our users to primarily developers who has experience in Git but has not used GitLab before. And we kind of understood their pain points in terms of cognitive load, productivity, safety issue, as well as some emotional aspects. But yeah, that's basically what happened last week.
And then from all the presentations and feedback forms from Linda and all the other students, so since we know our two personas, we're going to reach out to one CS student who knows GitLab. Doesn't have to be CS, just someone who's experienced with Git, and then one person who just hasn't used Git before, doesn't know what it is. And then we're going to do like a task analysis with the person who understands how to use Git, and then cognitive walkthrough tasks with the person that doesn't know have experience with Git. And then also we in the next week our goal is to do market analysis on GitHub GitLab competitors.
Cool. Um, did anyone from the university, or maybe this would have come through Linda, reach out to you about signing a participation agreement for this?
Not yet.
That is what I thought. Okay. That is the one thing we're waiting on. I got our lawyer and their lawyer to talk to each other about it, and they wrote some addendum for the agreement they've had for the last couple of years specific to this year. And then I don't remember her name, but somebody from Tufts legal department said, "Great, we'll get the students to execute an agreement on this, and we'll get back to you." So I pinged them this morning and say, "Hey, have you done that yet?" And it sounds like no. So we're waiting on that. But once they've come to you with that, then we can share extant research results with you as well on our side.
Okay, perfect.
I'm sorry, will you I was taking a little bit of some notes there. But I think my notes are incomplete. Will you tell me again? So you said you have two different personas. You said developer and
Yeah, the someone who just is really experienced with GitLab, and then someone who hasn't heard of it or doesn't know how to use it.
I
Those are
see.
our
So
two.
like kind of
Yeah,
two different.
yeah, two different sides. And like with the persona that is experienced with GitLab would definitely help us to understand more how it works as well. So it's
Hmm,
helpful in two ways.
I see.
Yeah, so our classmate kind of gave us feedback on whether we should look into users who has never used Git before. And they kind of like pointed out to us, some of the problems that they face might be because they've never ever used Git even. So it's like completely new for them. But we thought we'd look into both to see whether or not we should just assume user have Git experience.
Yeah, that is an interesting decision point. I I would say that you have a fixed period of time, right, that you can do this project in. Um, And you certainly have to cover a lot more ground in helping a user who's not familiar with how Git works as a technology to onboard to GitLab. Um, so in the interest of time, you might want to focus on this person knows how to do these things but has never used the platform before. Um, just to kind of like not, try to, what's the word? Try to drain the whole ocean or whatever. Like, not to like try to bite off more than you can chew in the amount of time allotted kind of thing. But please consider that advice. It's your decision.
Yeah, for sure. I think right now we're trying to like make it more specific and as narrow as possible so we can actually have a clear problem statement.
Mhm. And a quick plug, you do have GitLab's service designer as one of your advisors on this project. So yeah, she may be quite helpful to you in kind of figuring out how this all goes. I was very excited when she signed up to be one of our volunteers for this year.
Yeah, I think it would be great. You guys mentioned that maybe you could connect us with like very experienced GitLab users. And I think later on, after we like get a base understanding by ourselves, even after talking to some folks, that would be really great for a little bit later in our project. I also wanted to just ask the quick question about the NDA stuff. When we're gonna do this like task analysis and cognitive walkthrough with folks, what are we like allowed to say that we're working on a project for you guys or um
Oh, yeah, I think that that's totally fine. It's not an I don't think it's an
oh, it's
NDA.
not
I
an NDA.
think it's more like there's some sort of agreement that they want you to sign before we can share inside information with you.
Okay. Okay,
So
understood.
you're allowed to talk about what you're doing. It's that we can't share like research results or internal documentation with you until those are signed.
Okay, makes sense.
And there's Kate. Hi.
Hello, sorry, a director was stuck in a Qualtrics loop. So,
No, no, no. I thank you so much for jumping on last moment. So this is Kate. She is our UX research coordinator. These are our Tufts 2026 students. Yeah, I think maybe you all have some questions and maybe she has some advice for you. I don't have anything specific on the agenda for this, so this is a little bit freeform jazz, but
Yeah. Hi Kate. I'm Ivy. I am the project manager slash UX designer on this capstone team. And do we all want to introduce ourselves?
Sure, I'm Rihanna. I'm also the project manager and UX researcher on this project.
Hi, I'm Chelsea. I'm going to be focusing on UI UX design as well as UX research.
Hi, I'm Jack. I'm also focusing on UX research as well as content design for a project.
amazing. So nice to meet all of you. As Chad said, I'm Kate. Um, I'm our senior UX ops specialist here at GitLab. So I will likely be the one helping you find participants, get scheduled, and also figure out if what you want to do and who you want to speak to is feasible given our pool of users.
Well, I guess we could debrief you on what we just talked about, our next steps. We just want to do, on the user side, we want to build two personas, one interviewing a experienced GitLab user and then one non-experienced GitLab user. And then with that, we wanted to do cognitive walkthroughs and task analysis just to get a better understanding of where people are at with onboarding. Um, I don't know if you had any more advice for us, if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, so experienced GitLab users are easier to get because they also tend to be interested in these kind of projects. Um, for inexperienced GitLab users, one thing we've noticed in the past is you can't just ask how long someone's been using GitLab for. You have to kind of get an understanding of how frequently they're using the tool. So say they've been using it 3 months, but they're using it all day, every day. They kind of get very close to an experienced GitLab user comparatively. So when you're crafting your screener, that is something that I would just keep in mind. Um, Newer users are a little bit harder to find, but we do have some third-party tools that might be able to get those users for you. But when you see responses coming in it will skew towards experienced GitLab users.
Awesome. And on top of that, currently when we're doing our own like walkthroughs just to understand the flow, um, we're kind of struggling to really see a real project. So we're obviously logging on to like a very empty GitLab account because none of us have ever used it. And our project that we just got added to by the GitLab team is also quite empty. So I was just wondering when we're conducting these sessions with actual users, how will their GitLab interface look like to start with? Is that going to be consistent or is that also going to be different from person to person?
So are you looking to use like a sandbox environment or their own GitLab environment?
I guess we're not quite sure about that and not super familiar with how these interviews typically go. Do you recommend a sandbox environment in this case?
Um, I don't, Chad, do you know if we used the sandbox last year?
Last year, the research that the students did, they didn't really need to have they were talking with experienced users generally, because of the nature of the problem they were working on. So they if they needed any reference to an actual like, existing UI, then the person might just like pull up their account and kind of show something. I think there might be an upstream decision uh about what you want to test that you need to make first, because there are a couple different onboarding experiences involved here. One might be someone who is just joining GitLab on their own on the SaaS version of GitLab for the first time and they're starting from scratch. One might be someone who is setting up a brand new like on-prem install and they're starting from scratch. Those are broadly the same. There's like slight differences in terms of like the UI that they're experiencing. A different onboarding experience is someone who gets invited to an existing project or group, but they're new to GitLab. So the big difference there is in what they have access to from the start. So if you just go to GitLab.com and you create an account and you sign up, then you don't have access to anything yet. You get kind of like starting from scratch. When someone starts as an employee at GitLab, for example, we invite their user to a bunch of groups and projects that we have. So they are brand new. They haven't done anything yet, but they have access to a bunch of stuff. Um, I think that you may want to scope the work that you do to one or the other of those experiences, depending on because they can be kind of different. But it's something to bear in mind when doing user research as well, is like, do you want to, if you're going to do like you were talking about uh where is it? Somewhere in your notes. You're talking about doing task analysis and a cognitive walkthrough. So you might want to decide, okay, do we want to create a fake project and invite this person to it and then see them walk through this process and see them interact with the project? Or do we want to have this person create a totally brand new project, a totally brand new user, and like part of their onboarding maybe is that they create a project and all that sort of thing. I think there are kind of some scripting decisions about kind of where you want that user to go and what parts of the experience you want to test out that you need to make.
I'm not sure if we went over this, but how far does the onboarding process consist of?
Sorry, I can't quite hear you, Rihanna. It might be using the wrong mic.
Sorry, maybe
There we go.
my headphones weren't working. But I just wanted to ask, I'm not sure if we went over this, but how far the onboarding process consists of, like from signing on to GitLab to making a project, finishing a project, or like what are your guidelines for that?
I can give more context of the original project proposal. So it seems like the one that they chose, because Chad was mentioning a couple of different types of onboarding, is there's an existing GitLab instance and a user is invited into that instance. My recommendation for you, if you want to do UX research, is to set up a fake GitLab instance and import projects into it. So you can import projects from GitHub or GitLab, public projects. This is what I've done in the past. Um, and even if you have like 3 or 4 projects, And the scope of onboarding is like the realistic use cases. Let's say I'm a new developer and I've just joined a company. The company's invited me into GitLab. I have lots of experience with Git and development. That's our typical user base, but I don't know anything about GitLab. I get an email, you've been invited to GitLab. I go through a sign up process and I'm dropped into GitLab with no onboarding. GitLab's application hierarchy is not the same as competitor platforms that I have experience with. And I'm getting lost because I can't find things. So, in terms of the boundaries, I think you all can define it. I really echo Chad's point about not boiling the ocean. Like, we don't need to have like a 3 month user journey. But I think even if we make the email super clear and the like sign up process clear, and then even if the first 5 minutes in the product they have some introduction of you're in this organization and this is how the application works, like that would be sufficient. And of course, it can go so much further than that, but that would be like already like a huge uplift to what we currently have in production.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Then do you think it's better that they look at .com or self-managed? Maybe it helps to scope that as well.
.com is easier to simulate for UX research, so
Yeah.
I would just do that.
Yeah. So I
And
think
from the invited user's perspective, there's not really a difference besides the URL that they're visiting in that case. There's a big difference for the person who is doing the inviting because on self-managed, they're probably an admin. They probably have access to more controls of the platform, whereas on SaaS, nobody is an admin except a very small number of people who actually work at GitLab. But for the user who's invited, I think it's the same. It's just that, maybe it's like development.mycompany.com instead of gitlab.com.
so. Then if we go back to the two different personas, so you have one who's familiar and one who's unfamiliar. The person who's unfamiliar with GitLab, I think it would help if they're still familiar with coding and development and other technologies. So um, that's something that you could consider.
And it sounds like that user is maybe more important to serve here, or rather, like there's kind of different problems, right?
Yeah.
The user who's not familiar with GitLab as a platform, the thing we're trying to do is like help them get to what they need to do because we know that they already know what they need to do. They just are not familiar with the way that we organize things. The user who is already familiar with GitLab, I think onboarding is kind of more of a like it's a different problem for that user. For that user, it's more like, okay, I need to like read the documentation on this project and see like what my specific job activities are, which is a very different sort of thing and not as generalizable.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage you all like to keep the scope to engineering background, very familiar with Git, but have never used GitLab or have minimal experience. So in the past, when I did recruiting, I specifically recruited for people who had never used GitLab, but did have an engineering background.
I also think
Okay,
it's
on
easier for experienced users because then so I think you want to help them answer the question, okay, now what? After they've accepted an invitation. So instead of just showing them, I think broadly, this is how things are organized, what things you can do. I think it's easier to narrow down to a path to get to work because that's the goal. Like you want to work on a project, a group, um, and get to know the teams, the members, and so on.
Yeah, that's a good point because they actually know what they have an idea in their mind of what they would need to do as opposed to someone who's also not familiar with Git as a technology who's probably not a developer who would probably be like, I don't know what I do once I onboard to a project. Uh, Kate, in terms of recruiting, any any notes on the above?
Um, non-GitLab users are easier than new to GitLab users.
Hmm.
So there is that point as well. Um, if like we have a small pool available that we can invite directly that are non-GitLab users who signed up for research with us. We also then have access to say like user interviews or respondent and their panels, and user interviews tends to have a more senior panel. So folks are a little bit higher up in their job role, but we have a lot of folks in there who do not use GitLab. Um, there's a lot of Azure, Bitbucket, Jenkins, and GitHub in there.
Mhm.
So you can also get an idea of what they are using. But we do have a lot of developer roles available in there. And we can ask the screener capabilities in user interviews. We also do have a premium screening option. So they can record a 30-second video of them talking about a topic as well to make before you decide, yeah, I want to speak to that person. Because I think last year we did have one or two who we asked if they could speak fluently in English, and they said yes, but it was not great for the students. They couldn't really understand them, so that is an option we have this time as well.
And just to clarify, which recruiting platform are you talking about?
User interviews.
Oh,
Yes, there's many of them now. The other thing with user interviews is that because y'all don't have a GitLab email address, you won't be able to join our instance. So you won't have access to the tool directly. Um, the screener you share with me, I will input it and then I will go through the audience, kind of narrow down so that we can say, yep, these are the people that we're looking for. We want them to work in like this company size, this background, these skills, and it will recruit folks for us. You will then be able to shortlist. So we'll export that list so that you can view who has signed up. Um, and when it gets to scheduling for interviews, the best way to go about it is to say, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, from this time to this time, we are available, and we will create manual blocks in that calendar in user interviews. So this way it gets scheduled according to your schedules and not our schedules, because it will read our schedules and we're all in different time zones and whatnot. So it would not be great to probably have meetings at 5 a.m. So
Thank you for that. Just to follow up on this process, I guess since we haven't signed our NDA yet and we're still looking into the problem on our own this week, how much time should we leave for you to prepare us for the recruiting? Or how does that timeline work for you?
So it will depend on your final audience type. If it is going to be primarily non-GitLab users with an engineering background and maybe one or two other specificities that you have about them, I need between 5 to 10 days, mostly because of like the scheduling piece. And it's not like you guys can go into the tool yourselves and see folks as they sign up. We have a little bit more back and forth, which is going to add time. The users will sign up pretty quickly in user interviews. It's been great for that. We see very quick turnarounds. It is then the back and forth between us and you and working out schedules and making sure that people are getting scheduled at the right time, people are showing up to the meetings, um, and it's actually the people you want to speak with.
Yeah, I think right now we will really work on trying to define the user that we want to interview and also defining the problem. I had a specific question in terms of the two onboarding flows that we just talked about. So it seems like for the second one, where users have experience, it will be sort of difficult to see a specific issue that they're facing because each of them could have different issues at that point, and we would sort of have to see what's like the common issue between all of them. Whereas in the first onboarding flow, it seems like they just need like an overall orientation to the homepage that they land to. Is that correct?
sort of. I think that for for the for the audience that Kate just described, like people who have an engineering background but have not used GitLab specifically, um, you're probably going to find a lot of alignment on the onboarding needs that they have that maybe we're not meeting right now. I think that you're going to get more diversity of problems and more interesting, which is to say hard to solve problems. When you look at people who have used GitLab before but have problems when they onboard to new projects, because those might start depending on the way that the project is documented or the way that the team works or uses GitLab, as opposed to kind of like the things that the platform walks you through.
Sounds good.
It seems ambitious to try to do both in your time frame, to be honest. And I think the I've never used GitLab before will be easier to comprehend as all of you are not that familiar with GitLab yourselves and like developer workflows and stuff. I don't know. I would probably choose the easier one because I think there's still a lot to uncover in there.
So do you, I think it might be useful for, I can help with sense making of all this information that you gather. So we use, I don't know if you are familiar with user journeys or journey maps. So I can help you with that as you start to gather this information. But first, my recommendation is that you try to go through this flow yourself before you are also doing that with the users. And when you do that, you can document it so that it'll help you understand and clarify what are the sequence of steps. And maybe after talking to a few people, you'll realize that some steps are pretty straightforward and the same problems are being repeated. So you want to make better use of time. Then you can say that, okay, we want to zoom in on another phase of the journey. So if you haven't, have you used journey maps or are you familiar with journey maps? Kind of. Okay, I'm happy to help you because I think for a complex topic like this, that can help make sense of information. And are you using any AI tools in this project for sense making?
We've only used chat to help us sort of clarify our thoughts at this point. But if
Yeah.
you have any recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, whatever tool you use in your university should be good because that can also help you to make a draft of the journey. Then you will know more soon, and then you'll start to update it and correct it. Yeah, I can try to find some basic information on journey maps and share that with you in upcoming sessions, and also show the journey maps that we use, for example, or the terms that we use, so that you don't have to reinvent it. Yeah. I guess that's what you meant, right, Chad, with having a service designer here.
Mhm.
Great. Yeah.
Cool. Let's see. Any other questions
Oh yeah, one
for
more
Kate?
note. I
Well,
think, sorry, I added one more note here, but maybe it can be in a different place. Of course, like you are looking at how people will interact with the product, right? Like from the sign up, but also look at how are they accessing information from our website, from docs, because we also have Lorena here from the docs team. Yeah, so it's not always just what happens within the product, but also are they looking for information on certain portals or forums, and do they expect information to be there? And Jack, since you mentioned that you would be looking at content design, that might be of interest for you. Yeah.
Yeah, you can also look into as you navigate GitLab or as you also try to define the onboarding process, you can also look into the documentation and maybe identify some gaps there, or maybe there are things that are not clear in the getting started that, yeah, you can include in your project or improve in that.
cool. Um, any other questions for Kate while we've got some for time? Or Kate, any other things you want to make sure are clear for the students while you're here?
I think, it's once we get the screener and everything that we can start to really get into the feasibility. As of right now, especially you're going that non-GitLab user route, it does seem relatively straightforward. Knock on wood that it just goes smoothly. Um, but if it gets to a case where y'all want to see how that process looks, I'm also happy to do like 30 minutes and walk you through setting up a screener and user interviews because you don't get to do it yourselves. And I can show you about like how to pick your audience types and what your selections are there. It's kind of what you would use in recruitment anyway in any kind of panel. So that is an option if you're all not sure what happens and that bit is too shrouded. But other than that, I'm also here for any other questions as they come up as you're crafting the screener and you want to make sure things make sense. Also happy to help out there.
So I don't think we have our email, your email from the initial email list. Is it possible that we get your email, or what's the best way to reach you?
Oh, we do, for your information, Kate, we do have a Slack channel with the students, if you would rather do that there.
Yeah, happy to join the Slack channel. I will also put my email in the chat just in case anybody needs it. But if you add me to the Slack channel, you'll be able to see the email there again anyway.
Cool, done. All right. Well, I think it has been fairly typical early in the project that we don't actually need to use like the full hour for our check-in. Do we have anything else at this point we need to chat about, or are your next steps clear for you on your project?
I think just to quickly go over our action steps for next week.
Sure.
Um, it seems like the best thing for us to do is to talk to these CS students who have engineering background but have not used GitLab before, and to see if we could set up a little interview with them. It doesn't have to be like super elaborate, as they're not like I don't see these as like as lengthy as the user interviews we're gonna do later on, but just to orient ourselves a little better. And do you recommend us like adding these public projects at this point to set up sort of a little like environment for them?
Yeah, I think if nothing else, then trying to get kind of like the project that you will invite people to set up at this point is good because you may find that you want to iterate a bit on that. So better to do it now.
Okay,
You guys said
awesome.
there were publicly like importable projects that we could use as an example, right?
Yeah, so any public project or repository on GitLab.com or GitHub or anywhere. On GitLab, there's like a plus button, and you can import a project from GitLab or from GitHub. So I just recommend you to import a couple of public projects just to have like a somewhat realistic looking GitLab for your interviews.
Awesome. And we're also looking to the competitors, but as of now, we're not really sure like what we're looking at exactly with the competitors, but we just thought to get like an overview of some of the other platforms out there.
Hmm. Yeah,
Have
if
you
you
worked?
want to, sorry, go ahead.
You no, you go, you go.
I was just gonna say, if you want to compare apples to apples, it's a little tricky because you would need someone to invite you to a project on GitHub or a project on Bitbucket. But if you just want to kind of see generally what their onboarding flows are like, you can just go create a user and see what they put you through.
Yeah, it can also be onboarding to an organization or an instance, and you can simulate that yourself in GitLab and competitors by just using dummy emails. Um, I can, like, have you figured out how to simulate the invite flow in GitLab yet? And like the accept invite?
You guys mentioned the 10-minute email
Yeah.
last time we met, and so we might go for that.
Yeah, I recommend. I think actually we might block that, but what you can do is just do your email plus one, your email plus two, that will work.
Yeah, I think it is common for like temporary mail server services to get blocked for user sign up on a lot of platforms. But yeah, plus addressing should work because you'll get a unique email string, but it will still go to your real email so you can actually access it to, get like the link to sign up and all that sort of thing. Cool. Well, anything else before we wrap up for today? All right. Well, thank you all for being here. Kate, thank you so much for jumping in last minute. If you have any questions between now and the next time we check in, find us in Slack. I will follow up with all of you. I mean, it sounds like you will be followed up with by someone from Tufts on signing the thing. But as soon as that is done, then I think we have some extant user research information that we can share with you. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Have a good Thursday or Thursday evening, depending on where you are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.